To start in a design, we're going to open a case and go to the Ceramill Mind button. That'll open the design program. For this case, because we had scanned this in using the two stone models in occlusion, we will align those models as our first step of design. If you used the single stone model option, where you had a byte registration, you will not have this step. So it'll show us our lower arch now, and we're going to try and adjust our view, zoom, and rotation to try and get them similar. And then just left click on any similar point in each window, and the software will automatically begin to align them on its own. Once it's done loading, the next button will light up and we can move forward. Now we'll do the same thing on the upper arch, simply adjusting the rotation as needed, trying to get them roughly similar, and then click any point that you can see is similar. It does not have to be on one of the teeth. It can be on a dot you've made on the stone model, any point that seems familiar in each scan. The points do not have to be exactly placed. The software usually does a pretty good job of finding the correct orientation, even if you've marked it a little bit away. Now that our alignment is finished, we want to take a look around, double check that it looks like it's in occlusion as it should be, and continue forward. Now the software wants to confirm which way is up, so we're going to make sure we're looking at our prep from our top view and hit the Set Current View as Axis button, and then continue forward. Now the software is asking us to mark our margin line, so we'll do what it says and simply click a point on the margin, and the software will try and auto-detect that with this black line. If it was off in a certain area, you can click additional points, or if you want to make changes by hand, we can go to the Correct and Draw tab. In here, you can use the Draw tool to manually left-click areas to draw a new line, and double-click once you finish the new drawing. If you don't wish to draw, you can also click on the Move tool to simply move any of the green dots present. Once we're happy with where our margin line is placed, we'll continue to the insertion direction step. The software usually does a pretty good job of coming up with an insertion direction for you. What you want to look out for is any areas that look like a highlighted rainbow section. If you're changing the insertion direction yourself, you'll see any red area is trying to warn you that there would be undercuts with that insertion direction. So as you adjust them, just make sure there are no red areas, and then continue forward. Next, it has us set our cement gap spacer. Anywhere in green is going to be a very tight cement setting. It'll be almost 0 millimeters of space. And everywhere highlighted in yellow will have the cement gap, which is set on the left-hand side of the screen. If you did need to have different zones of cement gap, say any area that needs additional spacer more than the 0.05 that this is set to, you can hit Add Another Zone, change that value, and use the paintbrush to highlight any area that needs the different space, and then continue forward. At the next step, it gives us the option to copy either one of the other teeth that we're designing or one of the teeth that were scanned in. In this case, I'm going to continue and simply just use the anatomy library. It'll take a second to load, automatically detecting the adjacent teeth, and try and position a crown for us based on those teeth. From here, we can use the Move Teeth tool to move our unit around, and when you move it, it's always based on what direction you're viewing from. We can also use the Tilt tooth to adjust the buccolingual tilt of our unit. Once it's roughly in place, we'll continue forward, and we have some similar tools for adjusting the unit. We have a little bit more freedom in rotating our unit. And I'll pull up my antagonist to take a closer look at that orientation. By using the Control and Shift keys, you're able to adjust the scale of the entire unit or the scale of the unit in one direction. Again, once you've got the rough position of everything, you can hit Next, and it will adjust the bottom of our design to have it match our margin. We have some additional sculpting tools by adjusting either the cusps, tooth parts, or other items on the unit. Depending on which item you've chosen, the unit may move in slightly different ways when you left-click and drag pieces around. I mostly will switch between the cusps and tooth parts tools for a little while to get things set up like the cusp tips, the contacts and marginal ridges, make sure they're overlapping at least a little bit, and adjust the buccal contour of the unit. You also have the Free tab, where you have the ability to use the Add or Remove tool and the Smoothing tool. In general, left-click will add. If you hold down Control, it will let you smooth, and holding down Shift will let you reduce. Adding is highlighted in green, smoothing in blue, and reduction in red. In addition to the different types of add, remove, and smooth, we can also switch to different cursors. Right now we're in the paintbrush mode, which is usually the easiest to work with when starting out. But you can also switch to a knife edge or a cylinder shape for different types of adding or reduction. You can also adjust the size of your brush and the strength to adjust how fast you're working and how broad an area you want to be affecting. When using the point knife tool, you can very easily subtract areas to try and redefine our anatomy, or just accentuate different parts of the anatomy that are already there. If you start to see any highlighted pink or orange areas, that means that the unit is becoming too thin. So I would use the Add tool at a fairly large circle size to add until those red areas are gone. After I've got the majority of my design done, and I've made sure my unit is overlapping with both my contacts to the opposing and our neighbors, I'll go to the Adapt tab. This is where you can have the software automatically cut to the opposing or cut to our neighboring contacts. This one was cutting fairly heavily to the opposing, so I'm going to undo that and try and make a couple changes by hand to make that a little less severe. After I've reduced it by hand a little bit more, I'll go back to the Adapt tab and cut intersections. I'll then switch to the Approx button, which is short for interproximals. And if you look underneath the scan, once I hit cut intersections, you'll see how it cuts away our contact. And it does do that to both sides of our unit. The important thing about these tools is they will never add to our contacts, so your design has to already be at the point of contact or past it for these tools to apply. Once the adaptations have been completed, I like to switch back to the Free tab and use our tools to smooth out the areas around our contacts. You can see when we've cut it away, it leaves these very obvious sharp edges around any contacts. I'm going to use the Smooth tool in a very small circle size to not smooth into the contact itself, but just the area around it. You'll also want to make sure that you smooth underneath the contact to make sure there's no areas that will get in the way of the crown seating. So we'll just go around, smoothing everything around the edges of both our contacts to the opposing as well. After that, make any final adjustments you'd like using our free tools. Double check everything about your contacts and opposing as needed. And once you're happy with the design, hit next and it will save. After this, it does give you some options which you may need to choose differently depending on where your nesting program is for a milling machine or if you're sending this off. But if all you need is the design finished, just highlight I'm done and hit next to save and close out of the case.